Okay, I've needed to rant about this for a while, but I keep seeing these comments and it's actually really ticking me off, so I'm gonna rant for a minute. I've seen so many comments that have said, oh my god, Eris is a horrible person, Eris did this and Eris did that, and then I've seen other comments, which make me equally mad, saying, oh, give him time, Eris is Rhys. Eris is like Rhys. He wears a mask, but he's actually a good guy, even though he appears horrible. Like, I can't with those comments, because first of all, what has Eris done on Paige? Tell me right now, what horrible thing has Eris done on Paige? Because we have Rhys, sexual assault, torture, kidnapping, stalking, drugging, all of this shit on Paige. That's not a mask. Those are actual actions he took, okay? What has Eris done? The only thing Eris has done on Paige is go after Lucien and Feyre when they were in the Autumn Court, and he explains after that it was a High Lord order from Baron. You cannot say no to a High Lord order. It's an intrinsic bloodline thing. Like, that's what happens. Cassian explains this with Rhys. But Feyre even says, when Eris puts the gag and binds of fire on her, that I knew the flames would burn if Eris willed it. He didn't burn her. He easily could have burned her. He easily could have overtaken her. Because sure, she's a High Lady by title, but he's a High Lord's heir. And, like, 500 years older than her, let's be real. He also let her, like, smash him in the face, and he let Cassian stab him because he had to make his brothers believe that he was actually trying to capture them for Baron. And I just want to point out that Eris never went for Lucien. He purposely and strategically let his weaker brothers take on Lucien because he knows that Lucien is equally as powerful as him. As we find out in the meeting, Eris basically knows that Lucien is Helian's heir. He knew he could take them on. That's why he chose Feyre. He had to put on a show for the brothers, right? Because, let's be real, Eris doesn't want Baron catching Lucien and Feyre any more than he wanted Baron having possession of Mor, which is why he left her on the border. So all we have saying that Eris is a bad person is Mor and her lies, which she outwardly says that she's a liar in Akafas in the bonus chapter. We see in Akasith how Eris says, I'm not going to explain this to you. There were things behind the scenes that you weren't privy to, and like she just doesn't care. And then he says this again later on to Cassian. But it's just like, he's never done anything bad on Paige. He really hasn't. And the only reason that Lucien believes that he's a snake is because Lucien still believes that he had something to do with Jesminda when he openly refused to hurt Jesminda. So much so that Baron locked him up in the dungeon and tortured him until he was unconscious, which kind of mirrored Amarantha with Lucien. And when he woke up, the first thing he did was not take care of himself, but he wrote an anonymous note to Tamlin to get the hell over to his border because he realized Baron gave the brothers hunting rights for Lucien. Eris is a protector. He can play the courtly games. He can wear a mask. He can be the strategist. But he is not a bad person. He has been working behind the scenes the entire time as a protector for Lucien and his court. Not to mention the things he probably does behind the scenes to keep his mother safe and alive from Baron, because there's no doubt in my mind that he knows that her and Helian are mates, and he's protecting her from Baron at all costs. He also looked at Lucien with longing. I think he wants to tell him the truth, but Baron. But there's also, what he did for Nuon during the High Lords meeting, and there's him refusing to give up his firstborn just for his own happiness. Like, let's delve into this for a second. So at the High Lord meeting, right, he does call Mor a slut, and they do have bad blood. I'm kind of convinced that it's kind of a game and it's not really real. But regardless, he apologizes to her in front of everybody. And then it says, like, the Lady of the Autumn Court looked really proud and happy about that. And then when Nuon is fighting with Baron, about the Fabane antidote, Eris, aside from Feyre, is the first male. Eris is the first male to pop up and say, I will take it. I believe you, like, I'll take your antidote. And she looked very appreciative, right? And even Feyre says, like, it was the most decent she'd ever heard him. Even Mor balked at it, and Baron scrutinized him. And then we have, like I said, the firstborn scene in Akasif when he's like, anything you want, armies, but not my firstborn. Because you have to remember that Kier and Baron set up this marriage between him and Mor when they were, like, teenagers. Like, so he knew Baron would have given him up for anything, and he probably still would give him up for anything. Baron is allied with Koshi now, so he would never do that to his child, first of all. And then we have, like, the fact that he has his dogs, and he really cares about his dogs, but not only his dogs, also his soldiers. Remember, Breland kidnapped him with the crown because he was trying to protect his men. He does so much good on Paige, and people won't see it just because he has an attitude. Actions speak louder than words to me. Hate makes no sense. Now, you all know how I feel about Rhys, so I'm not going to touch on too much of this, but I don't get at all why people are saying, Eris is like a Rhys. He's literally not. Eris would never harm his own people, his own family, ever. Rhys allowed Amarantha to slaughter half of the Court of Nightmares to keep Valaris a secret. And then, after Under the Mountain, he himself went to Illyria and slaughtered everybody who bowed to Amarantha, as if he himself didn't fucking do that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Massive hypocrite. Massive hypocrite. And that alone is just disgusting, honestly. Eris would never do that shit to the people of Autumn. In fact, Eris wants to kill Baron because of what's happening to his mother, his brother, and the people of Autumn. He wants to kill Baron for their liberation. Meanwhile, Rhys can't get it through his head that maybe Moore isn't the only dreamer in Hewn City, or maybe he should enforce his wing-clipping laws. Instead of, sending Cassian once every 6 to 8 months to just make sure the girls are training for an hour a day after they work themselves to the bone with chores. So for the fucking love of God, stop saying that Eris is like Rhys. Eris is a way better male than Rhys will ever be. Ever. And did you see how deliciously Eris treated Nesta? He knew she was dangerous, he knew she had attitude, all this shit. Did he ever fucking degrade her? No. Did Rhys, even though she's his maid's sister? Yes. Eris is a better male.